Hello, and welcome to today's immigration tidbit. We're outside today, a little coffee, and there's going to be planes going overhead, so hopefully you can hear me. I'd like to talk about the guilty plea and how the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, protects people. As you might have known from watching the news today, Cindy Powell, who is an attorney, pled guilty. And during the hearing, the judge specifically asked her several questions and specifically asked if it was knowing, if it was voluntary, and the judge had the whole record. In the end, made the conclusion that the plea was in fact knowing and voluntary and let it enter. Now, the question becomes, when an immigrant makes a plea in criminal court, do they have the same constitutional rights? The answer is they should, but the reality is many times they don't. Many times the language is not even English. Many times they feel pressured to do what they do and they just sign. But the bottom line is that the U.S. Constitution does not want people railroaded into a guilty plea. You go to other countries, and if the government, excuse me, if the government of the country believes they're guilty, they're going to be guilty no matter what. Okay. I mean, there's no real protection for them. There's no rights. There's no constitution protecting them. Uh, Everything they do and everything they go through is in a puppet court. And the U.S. is not meant to be that. Okay, the U.S. is meant to actually protect the rights constitutionally of the defendant, because if they're going to take away someone's rights, and if they're going to have someone declare they're guilty and their lives are going to change, they're going to make sure that they know what they're doing. So a guilty plea in criminal court has to be knowing and voluntary. And when you have immigration, you have more complexity of what they're pleading to than if it were just criminal. Because if it's just a U.S. citizen, and here comes the plane, if it was just a U.S. citizen in criminal court, then you have the consequences of the criminal court, their conviction, how it will affect their lives, as far as being U.S. citizen and their work perhaps, and other things, their family, all that. But when you have someone who's not a U.S. citizen who pleads guilty, it's deeper than just what the plea is in criminal court, because once they're done with criminal court, they're likely to go to immigration court and they're likely to go through it all again. And it's not double jeopardy. I've had people say, well, isn't that double jeopardy? They were convicted in criminal court and now you're trying to deport them. It's not. The criminal court deals with the U.S. criminal laws and what they're guilty of. The immigration court deals with the Immigration and Nationality Act and whether or not they are removable because of the crime. It's completely different. And so they have to deal with both the criminal court and the immigration court. So the consequences are really double, and they need to be even made more aware of their consequences through both of those courts, which is why when they're playing guilty, they need to have a criminal attorney and an immigration attorney, both equally important. The criminal attorney might be super good at what he or she does and excellent, but they don't know immigration law. And likewise, you can't have an immigration lawyer represent someone in a criminal proceeding in criminal court. I mean, as long as it's not, related to cremation, um, because of that same reason. They're not a criminal lawyer. So you need both. And it's unfortunate that sometimes people want to save some money, so they just take a quick guilty plea. And in the end, they end up getting deported the rest of their lives, spending tons of money trying to get back, and hiring multiple lawyers over. I've seen cases where it's happened over decades. Their life changes and becomes the sole purpose is to try to get back. And had they had an immigration attorney protect them with the criminal attorney at the time of the plea, their whole lives would have been different. So, if you look at that, it's not nearly as expensive as what they ended up paying. But the point I'm trying to make is that the U.S. Constitution does protect the defendants and does allow the plea to be voluntary and knowing, but sometimes they have to do a little work to get to that point, and sometimes the criminal judge, no fault of his or her own at this point, really, because they don't know about immigration either, other than the fact that it may have some effect on them, on the person pleading guilty. Um, it's the duty of the lawyer representing the defendant to say you need to get an immigration attorney to make sure this plea deal is good or is not good, what we can get on the table that everyone will agree with. Okay?